Brothers and sisters, gather around Sister Dr. Sandra and allow her to amplify the utterings. We want to call upon everything that is divine within us, around us, conscious of the space that we are in. In this place where spirits have been bounded. As we overlook the pool that marked, that sealed the final bondage for 400 years of conflict. We want to call on our ancestors to be with us, enlighten us, to strengthen us, to guide us on this journey. We want to remember all those who made that last-ditch effort and jump overboard. We want to call their spirits out of the waters to be with us. We want to remember all of those who pave the way that we can be here today. And we want to give thanks for this moment that we are here together to share, to support, to amplify. So I want you to join with me by naming names, and we want to hear out of women's names as the women gather and the brothers gather around them. Let us call upon those who have gone before us, who have paved the way for us. And as you call names, we can say Ashe, so it is. I will pour in the water into the plant as we call the names. Anybody can stand? Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Empress Keturah
Rosa Parks,
Ashe, Ashe,
Maya Angelou,
Ashe, Nita Barrow,
Ashe,
Ashe, Ashe, Marcus Garvey, Amy Garvey,
Malcolm X,
Amit Ashwood Garvey, Ashe, Malcolm X, Ashe, Ashe,
Herman Ferguson.
Ashe,
Nia Simone.
Ashe.
Dr. King,
Yeah, Ashe. And all those whose names we don't know, but who contributed their blood, their sweat, their determination, who are that raw energy and that sacrifice that we all recognize today and pave the way. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
In these sacred spaces, normally being with our elders, and in that light, I've asked Viola to just give a few welcoming words for us.
Reference to the elderly. Yeah. Good afternoon, all sisters and brothers, because I know this is going to be a very wonderful experience. The Sister Sandra Richards, as I see it, like it's going to be very revealing and enlightening. And I think that there are lots of things that are going to be unearthed. It's going to help to give us a new birth, that we begin to have a different, maybe just a larger concept of who we really are. Because I think that's the real issue. But although that's the real sense that we do not understand who we are. And so I want to welcome you. I always come to the happy situation where sisters and brothers are talking about their own consciousness. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Viola. Last year, November, her book launch. There it is. Let me show you. This is Margaret's book. Margaret is called a Margaret. So Margaret had asked me to be the discussant. Am I challenging the spirit? I said yes. Sandra was there. And after Sandra told me, Sandra has a book. The way we see it. Sorry. It's over that table. That's one of her books. And she had said to me, Joy, and this wasn't immediately after, it was a little way after, probably the new year. She had said to me, Joy, you know, I have launched my book, but it wasn't really talked about. And I want to know if we could talk about my book and do something in terms of, not a launch, but something about the book. That was early last year. When it was early 2013, this is the end of 2014. It was agreed, yeah, man, I can do it. And then you know what happened? Life happened. She get busy, I get busy, we get sidetracked. Mother friends dying, you know, personal tragedies, all kind of things happening, you know. Life happening. And next thing you know, it is September 2014. So September 2014, conversation going on. Canada 2014 finished and this not happened. Meanwhile, Sandra had to travel. Then I get chicken gun here. All kind of things happen. You know what I find interesting these days? You go meet two people in Barbados and you ask if you had the chicken here or the gun here. It's always some conversation around the gun here. So then life continues to happen. Sandra busy. I'm busy, I know what I'm doing, but I'm busy too. And the next thing you know, we set a date. We said September is the 14th of December. It happened. Life continued again. Meanwhile, Sandra's mother, who's elderly and who's very important in her life, who takes priority in everything else in her life, things happen with her. She's 80 plus. And she had relatives that died. You know at that age when elderly people lose their relatives, so book shelter, plan shelter again. Now, y'all got to notice later, Sandra, I call her Sandra, I said the 14th coming up, this has to happen. We will not do it in the, but we had a grand scale thing, you know, you won't believe it. So I said to Sandra, in terms of discussing it before over a period of time, no different ideas of flow. And one of the things that was coming up was she don't only want to do it here, she wants to do it in the Caribbean, and she wants to do it in England because she's very much a global African. She's in the Caribbean a lot. She's in England because her family's still there. So we said, so we agreed that it can happen today. It can happen in a reduced form, but it will happen. But life happens. Certain things that make you understand and give confidence in yourself. The bookshop arranged for a reading of Margaret's work. And we went, and we was about 4 or 5 of us. I tell Sandra, you see how good Margaret reading was? It was 4 or 5 of us, but we left there enraged. Everybody was on a high and everything. So I said, we will make it happen today. So that's the context in which y'all are invited today to have these amplified utterances. So on the little program that we devise, remember it's a reduced form, we had said we would have a cultural presentation at this time. We were going to call our Sister Margaret, but Sister Margaret was doing other things. So we decided, I decided, the spirits decided that at this point in time, as an African people with spirits moving in this place, and as Keturah rightly identified, this is where the journey began. I say that because it began right here in Barbados, right in this vicinity, not sure of the exact spot, but it's in this location. This building represents a lot in the history of Barbados. Before the Bridgetown Wharf was built, here, you know, being in Barbados, say the Careenage. I hear people say carnage and all that. Right? Here was the main port of entry for goods, for exchange of services, and so on. And the ships used to dock out in Carlisle Bay and have like the men and bringing the stuff. So this point happened. Our major export was sugar and rum. I remember as a child, vaguely remember seeing it because I think about the 60s that fully moved down to the harbor. So the whole aspect of the import-export trade along here was finished by the late 60s. So this building represents a lot. It's probably a building block in Barbados, and later I will speak of building blocks. It's the tourist system. The tourist speaks of building a lot. You know, so every time that I start to think of what I'm going to say, I remember what Sandra was saying, what Margaret was saying. So a lot of the words would not be mine, but it's the spirit that we collectively have joined together. So it's not me talking, and if there's one little song that somebody could start, and that would be our cultural presentation. My favorite, I will not say until somebody that's come up with something. So somebody could just start something, and we will have a collective cultural presentation. We would do it in a cultural presentation. So we would do it. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. One love, one heart. Miss Julia? Thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Let's get together and feel alright. So we feel alright. Well, that's for me. Because my next task is to present SisDr Doctor. And when I first thought this is the doctor, I said, I know Sandra not for a good while, but I will let you perform. So as soon as I get off the phone, they have to see this is SisDr Keturah. I said, no, I'm not going to make a talk. Interview my home for 3 hours, right? So what I try to do is very conscious of time. I'm very conscious that we're here to say Sandra. I jot down some stuff. And you know, like when you're preparing for an exam and you try to get everything right and edited, it just ain't happen. So these thoughts ain't as coherent as I like, but I guess what I'm trying to do is to capture that 3 hours in a couple of minutes. Sandra, SisDr Sandra Doctor. SisDr Sandra Dr Richards. SisDr Doctor. SisDr Doctor. Believes in social space, and she believes in the community, and she believes that it becomes a practical classroom, and they're always teachable spaces. And as such, as an educator, she has earned the valued title of social context practitioner, in addition to being an educational consultant. The journey of her, in fact, as she would say, her rites of passage
trying to remember why this smell is familiar. You know, there's something in you that's trying to remind you of something. Some of the things that I talk about may be very unpleasant to, you know, actually some things just stink, it's just, and then the intuition, not to undermine your sensibilities around things, just to bring it to the conversation. If there's something that's coming up for you, someone else in the room may already be experiencing it or having a question, but you may articulate it on their behalf or on behalf of yourself or whatever. So just to bring it. The methodology that I'm bringing in the Eurocentric system, it might be called grounded. Actually, I think there needs to be a new name for it, but I'm not spending too much time on that. So we're sharing, we're checking understanding, and your participation is encouraged. I was asked by Joy why I'm doing this now. When I first came to Barbados, there was Margaret graciously hosted a gathering where I spoke to sisters and said I would not be doing anything. I just got here, I'm not doing anything, I need to understand the space. And I would wait until I was directed to do something. And I have been going to the reparations conferences, I have been reading, I've been listening, and I've been trying to get a sense of what I'm here about. Not just about my mother, but what am I here about? You know, I can't have had all these experiences and then just come and sit down. So currently a lot of things are quickening. There's a quickening happening. And some of it we're seeing on the TV, but you know, the other day I was told that, you know, there was a sister who was just attacked in the road, and the way the police stopped the thing was to throw rocks at the brother. I mean, what happens to a brother that makes him do that? And what happens to a sister that that's done to? And what happens to a people that see that? And what happens to the other people that watch what we're doing? You know, I mean, there are people watching and decisions being made, and when we're distracted and busy doing stuff, we can do other things. So, you know, there's a quickening. That recent event did not happen before the conversation to do this, but there's a number of things that are happening which are just crystallizing a level of urgency. And also, for me, there's the importance of being strategic, you know, not kind of something happens and we respond, and then, you know, we kind of, for our own well-being, maybe we kind of go into a different state, and then something happens again and we come up and then we come down. And the reason why we come down sometimes is for our own safety. We may be directed to come down. We may not know what to do, so we come down. You know, but there's a heightening, and then there's a thing, and that motion has an impact on our well-being. You know, I was sitting talking into the night with Margaret, and I was saying that I was baffled. I heard somebody say the other night, Sister Myrna actually, was remarking on the violence against that young woman, and I think there's a wondering about whether or not we can go out safely in this environment. Can we go out safely? I know it's a tourist destination, but is it safe for all of us to go out in that space? So there's a similarity between now and a time gone by. There are privileged people who they don't come out. They're not out all the time, and then sometimes you see them in certain spaces. So, yeah. Joy's already introduced who I am, and I learned a little bit as well from Joy. But I wanted to make the point that I'm not a historian. Sometimes when it comes to things like, certainly reparations, I hear, and the movement, there's a lot of history about what happened in that date and that time and where and things, but there's stuff happening now which is as important and relevant as something about a time gone by. So that's what I wanted to do. So I'm not going to go into the definitions of why amplified utterings and an African woman in exile, because some of it Joy spoke about, but if there's time, I'm happy to come back and explain some of it. But as Joy would have said, English is not my first language, so I will sometimes, forgive me, Margaret, who is a specialist in this room, I will not construct properly according to a certain frame of reference. I may get loud and I may get very quiet, and I may become silent. We may become silent. I wanted to just point out, though, that we in this room have intelligence. It is not attached to our genitalia. We are in a situation. So I want to really drive that home. Some of us are from, well, actually, all of us are from the diaspora. Some of us are, and the diaspora, when we say diaspora, we're usually speaking about outside of the African continent. That's my understanding in the kind of African conversation. When we say diaspora, we're talking about outside. We're in the 6th region of Africa. And there's a lot of us in the 6th region, and there's a lot of us who have not been to the continent, and there's a lot of us who are uncomfortable with the notion of being called an African. I mean, it's fighting talk. You know, if you tell somebody they're African, you are not being nice to them. And that's an interesting thing, because, you know, I get a lot of pleasure from the fact that I'm recognized as an African woman. I don't want to be recognized as European, even though a lot of my manifestation is as a result of a conditioning that I had no control over. And I also want to point out this melanin. We have melaninated people, and melanin has properties that is hugely recognized by other people, maybe not so much ourselves. Melanin has a dynamic of its own. The way we become aware of it sometimes is that, you know, if we have to go and have medicine, they'll give us more medicine than they give somebody else, maybe, because, or they may put more force on us, or they may marvel at, you know what I mean? But melanin has some properties. So it's different ways of being, hearing, seeing, feeling, translating, responding. That's, for me, what's going on here. I wanted to point out something here, that we have internalized oppression. You know, sometimes we do things that mean that other people don't have to do it to us. We exclude, we marginalize, we use non-verbal language, silence, sucking teeth, cutting eye, do people know what I'm talking about?
Of course.
All right, I'm just checking. Sometimes we do that. Maybe we're not doing it on purpose. We're not, because we say that we love ourselves, but we actually have a behavior sometimes that we exhibit that we have to check. I have to check myself sometimes. I'm like, I have to check myself. Sometimes I love so much, I have to check myself. I see people and I just like, you know, no one really perhaps gets what's happening, and I get it, and I want you to know that I love you. But if I go and tell or act like I love them, I am in danger. You know, I'm acting kind of a little bit crazy in a space, right? So there are things that have happened to us, linked to a Eurocentric way of being, colonization, marginal, all those things that have us behaving in an unhealthy way. So that now we are not looking at white people as the enemy, because sometimes we are worse than any other people could be to ourselves. We are a danger to ourselves. So once upon a time, when I was young and quite, green around some things, I would assume that if I saw somebody in a position where, like a policeman or, that they would be fair toward me. And actually I've learned that sometimes they're harsher because of what they're going through on the inside, which we would not necessarily know. It's only when you get a chance to engage, you begin to get that some oppression is affecting people in uniform and people in positions and women who are at the top and surrounded by men, and what the men are doing to the women that the women can't tell us about has them acting a certain kind of way. That doesn't excuse it, huh? I'm just sharing that there is a thing that's happening to us that's got us acting a certain kind of way, right? I am very encouraged by the amount of people that are coming out and walking. I was concerned in Ferguson when they brought out all the guns and the tanks and everything. I was like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call my colleague at work and ask her to cancel my appointments because I'm catching a plane and I'm going to do what? Not sure, but they need people on the ground. the best thing I could do actually would be to work out what I can do, where I am, and how I can link and support a movement where there is no separation. Those people being attacked are us. Those mothers grieving are us. The notion that there's a reasonable way of being is, I don't get that. I went to an event that Margaret put on the other evening, and she has a beautiful voice. She started to sing, "No woman, no cry," and then she just kind of arrested herself, kind of put herself in check. Why shouldn't I cry? Why shouldn't I cry? Who says I shouldn't cry? Why have I got to always be reasonable? I don't feel too reasonable. You just killed my child, and you want me to do an interview on the TV, and I don't feel reasonable. That's your system. That's your thing. My thing is to wail from, from a place I don't even know exists. And when I've done that, then I might have a conversation with you. But like right now, so what for me is very sinister is that, this attention to white folk. White folk are no longer, you can't look and say they are the enemy. The enemy is supremacy. The enemy is a system. The enemy is a way of being that is against your well-being. And the agency of supremacy, I have a concern with. At this point, I am going to thank.
As Sandra was alluding to, there's some powerful women in this circle, I called Ms. Gill and tell her I wanted to interview her.
No, you didn't tell me you wanted to tell me you going to interview.
Ms. Gill preferred me to say what I know about her. Anyhow. Let's just give you a short insight into the person that is going to perform at the next time. Next. Margaret preferred me to say what I know about her. And Margaret's the person when she gets her idea in her head, she goes with it. And she got the idea in her head that every November there's a period called the 16 Days of Activism of Violence Against Women. And this year it has been relatively quiet. So Margaret decided that she wanted to have an activity. And in a short space of time, less than a week, Ms. Gill, Margaret, executed an evening of poets and artists. It was beautifully executed. Plan A did not happen, but Margaret's understanding of the dynamics and planning and administration and drama and politics and fair game, and as she would say, the instructions that come from the planet, had Plan B in action. And guess what? The Plan B worked. And as everyone that attended that event said, the moment was magical and it was beautiful. I share that story just to give you an insight into the resourcefulness of the woman, Margaret. Her life journey, or as Sandra would put it, her rites of passage is an amazing one. She's the receipt of a prize, an international prize, from the age of 14, and that was the beginning of her achievement that spoke to creativity. This creativity extends into a diversity of the woman. As a poet, she was awarded many accolades. On the national scene, she won the Frank Cullimer Award more than once. And I must dare say, she was first to come out baffled. Now when come out baffled into a poetry competition, it's like, so she was first after come out. As an academic, a lecturer, and a leader and student, a teacher and student, her mind never stops to fascinate me. She can say the simplest of concept and do many things with it. I will just identify two. She has an ability to complicate a simple issue. I could never understand one, but you can get I now could go on for hours of discussion. But on the other hand, she can do the reverse. She can take the most complicated issue and simplify it. She would often say, I'm no physicist, I'm no mathematician, I'm no nuclear scientist, but let me tell you, I know argument and I know logic. So I will break it down and I will carry it forward or I will carry it back. What is beautiful about Margaret is her involvement in many movements. Her arguments, the drama, her revolutionary action is that and one of the things that, in all of these things, one of the things that fascinate me is her ability to use words. Which Keturah behind there will always remark upon. She comes up with plans of action, and she don't only have responses to what people say, she has plans of action, recommendation, and like them or not, they're very solid. It's probably for us to take the time to investigate them and see what she's really saying. Margaret is a strong advocate for the promotion of better mental health care, and she has broken all silences about what it means to live with it. And while breaking the silences, she will always advocate for the need for persons to be cautious because there are consequences. This is only but one of her deep love for people and humanity. As a trade unionist, Margaret practices that to the hilt, whether it's with the ILO and UPW, as a student, as a worker. She can all make very clear what is the real issue and get to the point. Keturah and I are often saying, we haven't left the first part and Margaret going along. Yeah, this is but a brief synopsis of Miss Gill. Miss Gill, I'm conscious of the time.
Yes. Thank you, Joy. And Sandra and I just realized that nobody has introduced Joy. So I'm going to just take 2 of my minutes, which is a lot, which is really far too little to talk about Joy, but I'll take it anyway because we need to introduce Joy. I frequently tell Joy, and Diane, and Eudine, and Sonia does as well. This is a small group of friends who talk to each other online. That Joy is one of the most creative thinkers that we have come across. You would say something to Joy, and Joy gone all big boss at the back. Yes, when she's going, Joy comes up with some very, very, very creative. Joy challenges you to, I like myself. I like my mind. I think I am brilliant. I think I actually am quite brilliant. And Joy, I see something in this woman that is really brilliant, and the woman is challenging and getting me fixed. So I ain't in cinema, I guess. Before Joy challenged that way. All right, so that's who Joy Workman is. Of course, she's a designer. She probably made Sandra dress. If she didn't, she always makes Sandra some really wonderful stuff. So right now, Sandra has asked me to do a poem from a series of poems. It's an experimental poem that I wrote called Things I Learned Today. And I was asked to do one, but I noticed that she had SD, and I thought, well, maybe I needed to do more than one, so I thought I'm going to do 2. I am diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which is a mental illness, and I was one of the only people that I know about back in 2004 who made it known in the public that I'm diagnosed with a mental illness. And it wasn't, I didn't come out and think. I went to a meeting and I see my doctor at the door and she told me, we're having this discussion on depression and I was looking for you for the last 3 weeks to come and talk and I couldn't find you. Would you come and sit on the panel? And I had gone with my son and I realized if I go on the panel, I am outing my son, who's the son of a mother who has bipolar disorder. I have no problem doing it for myself. So I asked my son if he had a problem with it. And he said, Mommy, it's your decision. I like my son. But I want to come back to the difficult conversations that Sandra talked about and be quite radical here and say that after helping me to get the confidence to tell myself, admit to myself that I am diagnosed with a mental illness, the person who helped me to get there, and I had an argument, and I said something to them, and they said, "Don't compare me with your defective self." This came from somebody who loved me, I thought. Don't compare me with your defective self. And I hear everybody say, ooh, and all of that. But the people who are the mentally ill are the ones on the street, and the last ones, maybe there are people below us, but it's very easy to stigmatize everybody else. So I want to do this poem that's called As Man, and next to a partner. It goes pretty quickly, so you have to listen fast. As man. Yeah. The thing is, I wrote it before in Barbados we say, as man, right fellas? As man. So it's a kind of attitude, as man. Not because I threaten hell and damnation and fireballs and flow all around this house like lava, because we both here acting as man with you tenderness fully ensconced in you back pocket of the pants that ball up in a corner of a suitcase underneath the back bedroom. That I don't love you. I love you better probably than anybody that ever loved you, ever really love you again in you 58-year-old life, you idiot. Because you could only be an idiot. Acting so like you on stage as man, when I love you like my mother connect me with no sex, I must be an idiot. And the utterance that Sandra actually wanted me to say was, one of the things that I learned today was this: calling somebody Dr. Professor, Sir the Honorable, Your Excellency Editor is taking up all the ear that everybody else. Breathe and give it a warm one.
Can I also say that, give thanks for that this room, I tell Margaret that she has magic, and then she comes into a space and she creates, when I walked in here, she had done it again. So,
and you even see downstairs.
And I even see downstairs. Okay. So, I want to give thanks for that. I also want to give thanks for the names I haven't called, and one of those names is Julia. Julia, when I said I was doing this today and I didn't have a speaker, and I think Julia in her home started putting down her own speaker. Her speaker wasn't working. She started to have a panic, and then she called her neighbor and told her neighbor, who's an electrician, you better get over here because I'm not letting my girlfriend down. So we didn't need the speakers in the end, but I just want to acknowledge that. So I'm going to just unearth one or two things. I'm not necessarily going to go in the order of this, but in the UK, and Margaret speaks of having a diagnosed condition. Many of us have conditions and we have not been diagnosed. And I think that we need to, not just we in the room, I'm talking about the we that's bigger than the people I even know, need to recognize that there is no separation. And it's only a matter of time before the diagnosis that we have not had will be given. And also sometimes there's a misdiagnosis. And in the UK, I can tell you that they have something called section something. We are sectioned if the system decides, and it's usually African people, it's usually us, that you ain't functioning right, you get sectioned. And when you're sectioned, you have no choice about whether or not they lock you up. They take you and put you in a mental hospital for your own good. That's what they do. They section you, right? And I must tell you, when I started coming to Africa and the Caribbean, not so much America, but I noticed that people will walk around talking to themselves. You know, like, well, I don't understand. They're charging you for 6 things for this thing, and then they look at you and they talk to you and say, you see how much this is? And I don't know you, and I don't know what to say. I don't know, but it's okay, you know, because I know I understand, like I'm supposed to respond, but I wasn't raised in a place like that. But in the UK, if we're like, we do that, we're sectioned, and I'm just saying that we get a diagnosis, you get a diagnosis of something when you're yourself. You know what I mean? Because yourself is not themself. Something's wrong with you. Because everybody in the world is supposed to act like that. And when they capture and kill and rape and maim and call it a trade, it's okay. But if you do it, you were terrorist, you were savage, you were something. So I'm just saying. In fact, I don't think it's on the slide, but there was a period of time, and sisters who live in the UK still will be able to tell me if it's as prevalent, where as an African woman, if you had a pain in your shoulder or a constant headache or something, you go to your doctor, you can bet your bottom dollar they're going to tell you need a hysterectomy.
Oh, yeah.
You need a hysterectomy, right?
That is true.
Just, you know, you would be so much better if you had a hysterectomy. You see, the problem is that your uterus is something, and then they use all these words and oncologically something, and so it will stop if you have your womb removed, hysterectomy. But we could do it, you don't have to worry, because we can do it in a certain kind of way. What we'll do is we'll just take away the uterus, and we'll leave you with the tubes. So you think something wonderful is happening, and you just still have the headaches. Actually, the headaches turn into something else as well. And the permission to be black. Permission to be black is an interesting thing. Like in February, depending where you are in the world, you can wear your African garments and everybody will join in. And it's wonderful. You know, you start acknowledging people that you normally wouldn't say anything to. You know, in fact, some of us start looking quite normal in February. And then 1st of March, or in October, in the UK, it's October. So if you organize yourself properly, you know what I mean, in terms of earning a living and catching a plane, you can enjoy yourself twice a year. It's really quite interesting, right? The other thing is the dominance of men and the Eurocentric ideology in spaces sometimes causes a challenge. And I don't know, I'm trying to be generous. I don't know if all of it is intentional. Actually, I'm not trying to be generous, I'm just being sarcastic. It's very intentional that some spaces are the purview of men. And if a woman comes in, it is by invitation only and for certain parts on the agenda, because you couldn't possibly know about some other things. Those things are not unlike a time gone by when you would be invited into certain situations, and other situations you're not invited in. You are a non-person. Your point of view is not welcome. The other thing is the privileged spaces and the decision-making faces. I have a concern which will be referred to later on. I will expand on it, but you know, as I spoke about that personal story earlier on, where the whole talk about the vagina thing, you know, I wonder about those privileged spaces and who lets us in. Maybe we could say something about that a little bit later.
So, Keturah is a Rastafari woman that comes, and this comes from a deep African consciousness. Whatever that means, and however we got there, and what she wants to do is to always recognize that consciousness. And she said, and earlier I had made reference to it, I was asking her if this is also influenced her in the struggle. And she said she don't speak in terminologies of struggle. She speaks in terms of building. Because when we speak of struggle, it sounds like we're never going to accomplish a goal. She talks about the whole question of rebuilding one block at a time, one space at a time. And we had a long conversation, not as long as this is here. But Keturah is always fascinating me, you know. I've been talking to Keturah now over 20 years and she never ceased to fascinate me. It'll be, and she'll say, Joy, you know, just take it easy or something like that. Or she would say something to the effect, it's not that I'm not feeling the same thing. I always say to myself, when I grow up, I want to be like that. You know? But Keturah has a sense about the silencing of women. And I asked her, you know, like, when did that become most prevalent in your mind? She said it was something that was always with her. And she talked about the silence of women, particularly in the Pan-African movement. And in 2001, when we were having the conference on African descent, she said it was really interesting. She was in a room planning for one of the committees. Viola was there, Glenroy was there, and Glenroy is a past ancestor. And they're looking for a woman to be involved in this thing. And Viola is right there, a woman that has been in the Pan-African movement before. I wanted to feel young and say before I was born, but you know, that's not really true. And she said that silencing of women was really problematic. And she saw it again when she went to Durban in 2000, Keturah? 2000. Huh? 2001. And it has become her life mission to always bring women to the fore. And she said, Joy, if you're looking for grand things, I don't have it. From my day-to-day living, in my everyday interaction, I always make sure that I acknowledge women. I give them present. Even if it's to go up to a sister and say, hi, how you doing? You know, make sure when you come in a room, if there's only one woman, you acknowledge her. And she wants to make the narrative around women within our history. Challenge it. The narrative is always about women selling out. Where did that narrative come from? And she confronts that narrative all the time. We, as Sandra has said earlier, we do this thing together. And in this building process, we cannot have narratives that negate the contribution of women. And she said she makes sure that it must be dealt with. And in terms of the whole question of her understanding of the role of how we move forward, she said we just have to do it, keep getting in touch with ourselves. And you see, even talking to Keturah is bring down my you know. And she said we have to get in contact in ourselves, tap into and recognize how slavery is still with us and how we are trying to survive. And we must continue doing the building in every way that we must. We need to determine and define ourselves. We must grapple with the malaise that surround us. We need to be in touch at all levels, and we learn how to locate ourselves within the geopolitics. whether it's in Africa, whether it's here, whether it's in the Caribbean. We have to understand that dynamics. And very, 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 very importantly, the role of the family as one as the building block. It's very important in terms of how we bring that together. And she says that she has images of, she sees it, and if we focus on it, sometimes we will see it. She teaches a class, and she said there's this young gentleman, you know, the stereotype that you'll figure not involved, nice carpet look and so on. But every day after the class, he comes and he engaged Keturah in things that you wouldn't imagine, all about identity, about struggle, about building ourselves, and a concern for our people. And she thinks that every time you encounter depth in young people, and it is about one love, and that they're the generation that will carry us forward. And importantly, coming back to her whole trust and concern about women, is that the hopes that we need to validate our contribution. She says personally, she still have a little dilemma going on. When we want to validate what we consider the small things, you know, your family, a good family life, as opposed to the building, the large structures and the highways and so on. Those things are important. You cannot deny that. But when she goes into a space, because you see Miss Keturah there, she has traveled the world in terms of where her job has taken her as a Pan-Africanist, as a Rastafari woman, as an NGO activist, and so on. And every time she has to be introduced, she says, Joy, I would like to tell her that as a mother, a grandmother, a aunt, a sister. But they want to hear the other things. But these things must be validated at all times, and women's voice must come forward. And the building of the nation as opposed to the individual is what is out there, but we must take time to build that in the individual and how we value that. And the role of sisterhood is important. And as I was chatting to her, I said I would share this. I don't know if I should or I should. But I said, Lord, have his mercy. She said, Joy, I got to go now. Martin up there come to wash my hair. So I would say here is the building of the family, the unity of the man and the woman. I know better way than washing and cleansing. Keturah?
A few things. One, yesterday was my birthday. I never will catch up with you. So yes, I never will catch up with Elder Viola because my mother is in that realm. But with people like Viola and Myrna and all the women around here, I can feel useful. Yes, so my hair got washed. And when Sandra asked me this morning, what did you do? I didn't want to tell her, Martin come to wash my hair. So I said I did some personal grooming. But I want to acknowledge how sisterhood is alive and well and expresses itself all the time. I've known Mona for a little while from a distance, and we interact occasionally. I first came to my attention when her name was associated with bringing African history to the Garrison Secondary School. And I thought, yeah, you know, Sister Viola writing the book and another sister pushing it and me doing good things and so on. 2 nights ago, an event that Margaret organized, it was really, really nice. She said to me, I was going through my things and I found something and I thought I would give it to you. I should really show it to you. There it was. So the little things that women do, that bond us, that build us, that make us, because I absolutely love the fabric. And then I came in and Joy is wearing white and Sister Sandra is wearing white and I put on a little white. Yes, so all of that. But really, Joy got some of the details a little bit in the wrong order. But it's really about that. After the interview, Joy, I was saying, but look at you. Joy called you to interview and you couldn't find words to say anything, so that introduction was really generous because all the time I was saying, well, what kind of foolishness I talk to Joy? When you have to do the camera and the lights and the this and the that, you just be real eloquent.
Yeah.
And Joy called you to talk to you and you're stumbling forward. This and that. But anyway, all went well. But I'll tell you where it really started. I grew up Catholic. I grew up in Dominica as a Catholic and we did religious education at Convent High School. And there was an expression or a phrase that was repeated a lot in the New Testament. And Mary pondered those things in her heart. And I always was disturbed that Mary could only ponder those things in her heart. But there was nobody she could share it with, and she couldn't talk to anybody. Now, Convent High School, in the days when I went to Convent High School, was the high school. Certain people said to me when I manifested Rasta, you can't really be Rasta, not after you went to Convent High School. But one of the difficulties I had with Convent High School was that my mother's life was in none of the books that we did. I love literature, I stumbled through English, I tried to do my best and I was glad to go to school. But there was nothing about my mother's life in it. And my mother is a woman that I admire the most, and if there's any feminist in me, she made me a feminist. Because she said two things. You must have your own money, and you must make your own decisions. And the way to get that is through education. So when I had my period, and I didn't want to go to school, she said, you go to school if you see the teachers and you are home. But you're going to school. Now I'm saying that to say that my mother had 10 of us. 5 boys, 5 girls. And she struggled every day as a washerwoman to give us the best that she could. Not that everything that we needed, but the best that she could. But her life was not subject for textbooks. So you had the big economics books. I used to be proud of the 6th form girls with their big heavy book on economics. I thought, right. And while I was at school, there was a woman, Mabel Moyer James, who was Minister of Communications and Works. She was Minister of Education or Health. So I was proud of that. But why are women's lives not in books? Why is it we don't hear about women? Why don't women's voices come through? So when we were having that discussion, that has always bothered me, and it's been something that I always want to see. For example, in scholarship, if I ever had to get around to do the PhD, I really want to see that after we say, you know, Margaret Gill, such and such a year, we continue and we say Margaret and Margaret and Margaret and Joy. And the reason the way it came that to me was at a women's forum meeting one night. Somebody was reading the minutes. Babb was there, Gill was there, Cummins was there, Workman was there, this other person was there, but none of the ladies around the room were there in the minutes. It was always a man. I said, but Babb didn't do this. I was the person who was at the meeting doing this, you know. So it disturbs me how all the time we lose women, even when we think we are making them visible. And now that reparations is such a big subject, and you know, there are all these conferences, and you go to the conference, and most of the, I haven't been to any, most of the panels are men, and you see all of that. I just want to share with you to bring women's presence into it. That in 1783, a woman who had been a slave and found herself free almost by default, because it was the time of the Civil War, and the man who would have been her owner, he abandoned his plantation and went to Nova Scotia. So the formerly enslaved people found themselves free. And she had the consciousness to say, you know what? I work for this man. He never paid me. And now he has abandoned the place. As a black person, I am so endangered, because if you cannot say who your master is, then you know you're liable to be resold somewhere, here, there, or anywhere. And you know you have so many insecurities. She actually petitioned the Supreme Court for reparations. Her name was Belinda Royal. I had to write it down to make sure I forget. Her name is Belinda Royal, and she did that in 1783. So long before slavery was abolished, either in the Caribbean, or in the US, or in Brazil, or in Cuba, or anywhere, this woman had the consciousness, but also the nerve to step forward and to put a petition before the court. I'm looking for, where she actually placed the petition. Thought I had it written down nicely that I wouldn't forget. Of course I have it written down nicely. It was the General Court. It was the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And she petitioned to say that she should be paid for the work that she had done. So here you have this woman. She actually, the account of her, you can find it on the web. She was captured at age 12 in Ghana and brought to the US and worked, and then found herself a free person, but a free person with no means and with all kinds of legal insecurities. And she dared to appeal to the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and demand that she be paid reparations. Now she asked for herself personally. But the thing is, she got it. Now they didn't honor it because you know how the system is today. So they granted her an annual pension of £15, 12 shillings. When I was growing up, £15, 12 shillings was still a lot. So in those days, it was annual, but the point is, she petitioned and she got it. When they defaulted on it, she petitioned again and she got it. The record doesn't tell you whether she actually got it to the end of her life. But way back in 1783, here was a woman standing up and going up against the system and demanding reparations. It's not a story that you will rarely hear. You know, reparations is all about these big conferences and all of that. Another woman I want to tell you about, almost a century later, is Callie House. Now, Callie House, again, she was part of an organization that was agitating the National Ex-Slave Relief, Bounty and Pension Association. And she went about with her 5 children and her husband and her this and that she had to look about every day. She was active in the organization, and so active, she mobilized so many people and spread this idea of reparations and a pension to so many people that long before they did it to Marcus Garvey, they did it to her. She was charged with mail fraud, that she was using the mail which they used to send to recruit members and to send information and to solicit their contribution as members and so. And she was charged with mail fraud. So she didn't succeed, but again, this woman's name is not something that we all know. You know, you have that silencing and, you know, the part that women play. It always disturbs me, and it's not, sometimes this year somebody wrote about it from the point of view of women always selling out the struggle. The struggle for all the slave revolts on the plantation. We don't hear how women took risks and brought information from the great house to the field, how they subverted this and that and the other and made things happen. We hear about the bad that they supposedly do. I thought we should know a little more about the good that they do, and this time in terms of reparation. A few of you may be familiar with Queen Mother Moore, Audley Moore. Now, Queen Mother Moore, in 1957 and again in 1959, placed a petition before the UN. Now, she'd been active from the 50s, 60s to the end of her life on many issues of black consciousness, but particularly about reparations. And she drafted her petition and went and presented her petition to the UN twice. She was demanded $2 billion for 400 years of slavery. She wanted means by which those who wanted to return to Africa could repatriate. She made demands for self-determination. She spoke out against genocide. She demanded land. She demanded reparation. And when she didn't hear from the UN, she went in 1963 and presented her petition to President Kennedy. So women are taking initiative and are part of the larger narrative. But we're sitting down right after Durban. That's when you got the details of the countries. Right after Durban, we're planning the African and African Descendants Caucus meeting follow-up meeting here in Barbados. I'm sitting at the table, and the men are, but you know we don't have any women. You know we don't have any women. You know we don't have any women. You have Thelma Barnett. You have the teaching and pushing the history at the garrison. You have Viola, you know, doing the book and all the things that you do.
I went to a meeting yesterday. I won't call names, but I went to a meeting, and this brother was saying that he has some sisters from different parts of Europe who are very much into the struggle, and he wanted to tell us that. And then he said that he's trying, how they're so active. And he said that they were trying to give an award to a Barbadian woman active in the struggle. And they couldn't find women are scared somebody. Women are scared somebody. Yesterday. I
Also said in a lecture that was given by Professor Vereen Shepherd in Barbados. Shepherd is part of the committee that is organizing, helping to organize for the UN decade for people of African descent. Podium McCabe fell and said, any women in Barbados, you can't identify who have been part of that struggle.
On one occasion at the last conference, the person who was moderating response was so aggressive and violent. I just stayed quiet while the rest of the room erupted and said, we understood what she said. Because he said, I don't understand what you said. If you have a frontal attack, make it. That's what he said. And I was shocked, the room erupted, and then I said, I'm happy to talk to you after. Everyone else in the room seems to have understood what they said, right? But the danger of speaking in that space, the danger of me even reporting back, the consequence of me coming back and saying this, I have no idea what it is. And I must say, the Most High is my guide and protector. You know, that's where I speak from. So I'm saying, we need to be active in this mix. Otherwise, something is going to happen and we're going to hear about it. And I don't think that that's clever. I think there are people who need our support. They need our help. They need our support. Okay? And I think that we need to be open to engaging and offering support, because we don't know what it's like to sit in that space. But I can tell you now, as an observer, I've been to 2 conferences, one in St. Vincent and one in Antigua. I have a concern. I think the task force were appointed for 2 years. I believe the 2 years is up. But the reparations conversation continues. I don't know where it's being reported. I'm not in those privileged spaces. If any of you are, then when you go into them, I ask that you go in with compassion, but with strategy. Go in with strategy, because reparations isn't a recent conversation, and neither is it academic. It is not academic. It has an impact on people, not just in the Caribbean, might I say. There are diasporan Africans. There is a conversation that needs to happen. Now, I must say, I am not sure the how, but I'm telling you what my concern is. Rastafari were in the space. They were in the space when conversations were happening. We had breakout into rooms to discuss parts of this 10-point plan. And in another room was a conversation with a government minister from Jamaica, the chair of the reparations. People were in that room. And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it. I still don't understand it. I hoped I would understand it when I came back and I heard the reporting back. I still don't understand it. So, as women who are in this, and as brothers who are in this, I want to say, this is not a time for us just to be quiet and wait for someone to tell us what is happening. We cannot afford to. I think the people who are at the front line need our support so that the hologram is not a hologram. Now, this is just my perspective. I may be completely wrong. And if I'm wrong, I have been corrected before, and I like to learn from my but I'm just saying, something is happening. There's a quickening happening. I'm moving. The marginalization of women, we've kind of touched on, I think Sister Keturah raised it. We can't be found, apparently. Apparently we can't be found. And I tested some of my concerns with a number of people, and I heard that women want to be in this, and they want to be in that, and they want to be in everything. Which doesn't sound very welcoming to me. I mean, I might be mistaken, but it didn't sound very welcoming to me. And I also, if the women are missing, I want to know where the men are. Because I'm not here. I heard a sister, an elder sister, or an elder mother say the other day that she doesn't feel safe. She doesn't feel safe. That's a serious thing for us to say. And it may be because the brothers need help from us. They need help from us telling them that we don't feel safe, we don't feel included, I don't want to play, I don't want to be invited because I have a dress or just because I have a vagina. That is, I bring something else to this war that we're in. And that is a message I think that needs to be sent. I am not the first to say it. I have spoken with elders who have gone before. Sister Thelma, who I have a huge amount of regard for. And I really appreciate the elder sisters are here, the elder mothers are here. This is not a recent thing. And then I hear brothers. I spoke to a brother in Canada today, and he in the movement, and he said, I want to understand why they don't stay. Why women don't stay. They come and they visit, but they don't stay. Right? This is what I'm hearing.
I went to a discussion on Palestine a few nights ago at the university, week before last week. And it was organized by people here on Palestine. And the panel was several men and somebody from gender studies, a woman who's Muslim. And I remarked on that we don't have a lot of women talking about this thing. I mean, being approached to talk about this thing on the committee, and the guy said, they asked and they couldn't find any women. And I'm thinking,
They don't think about it because I remember
they don't think about
it. All the men were men, and then it seemed as though somebody told them.
Yes, you need a vagina on the.
So when Sean came out, I was on the line. He said, "Miranda, could you come to the platform and say something?" I said, "At the last minute, you're going to tell me to come up here and say something." Well, I had to move because I wouldn't say no. But this shows you how they're thinking. You're not including me. You're not including us. It's a last minute thing. He came out, saw me there, and I said, "Why did you bring me up?" He said, "We need a woman. We need a woman."
Why are you asking that? Why are you asking that? Why are you asking that? If it's a culture, yeah. What do you mean? If it's a cultural position?
Because I find that the way that we're treated by men is that they are first and foremost, and we are just there to support.
No, I didn't understand the culture.
We're not there in equal standing.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering whether they always see this from a cultural perspective.
Oh, okay. I understand now.
Barbadian culture.
Yeah. Oh, you meant Barbadian culture? I thought you were going away from that.
Only all over.
Only all over. That's what.
Patriarchy.
That's one of the things that we will discuss
Later. Yes.
So afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay. Keep it there very strong.
All right. So Sandra had asked me to do this poem because we knew that we were saying things, she was going to be saying things here, not me, that were hard about men. Anyway, so she asked me to read this poem. It's called "And I Still Expect You to Love Me." And I still expect you to love me, regardless of what we say. It was actually a poem written after hearing Mad's Calypso group in Barbados on the Guyanese woman to the Barbadian woman. And I heard when I listened to it, I realized the Guyanese woman is a young woman. She's denigrating the Barbadian woman and telling the man don't like Barbadian women because they give them too much trouble. And but being old, and I realized the woman who's speaking is a young woman, and the Barbadian woman is an old woman, and I thought there's a little disconnect here. So I wrote this from the voice of the old woman, and I still expect you to love me. Even though I occasionally wet my bed in my sleep, a big hard back woman like me. And it ain't got nothing to do with bladder control, and even if it do, I still expect you to love me. If my hair short and it picky, and it mostly missing on top, and it hard and it outrageous, and even if it got dandruff, I still expect you to love me. If I halt and I blind and all sorts of sclerosis breaking down my behind, if I got bipolar and schizophrenia, I could got psoriasis, I could got halitosis, I still expect you to love me. You know, even the dead does get love B-O-N. And you married me and telling people you treasure me, and you stand up near a priest and swear all sorts of foolishness. Now you think you could come here and tell me to my face you ain't love me? Horn Solo. Well, you could only be a piece of idiot with that. With all the kind of thing that breaking down you behind. And I never left off loving your ragged old tail. I still expect you to love me. You ain't love me? These are quotes from the song. You ain't love me. No, the first one is mine. You ain't love me? Bloomers too big. Rubbed down with lime call and termagene. You better already take them off.
It's risky. It's very risky saying the things that I'm saying, that we're saying. Well, I'm saying. It's risky. Because the backlash might be that, you know, I'm positioned. Well, I'm positioned in the UK. You know what I mean? So if I get positioned here, at least I'm warm.
Yeah. And there's the ocean.
Yeah. And there's the ocean. Right? Now, but the thing is, the spirit is love. The spirit that this is done in is love. I'm saying these things because I'm concerned. I'm concerned that if it's not said. So, one of the things that people have said to me in terms of the going back to Africa and the whole African conversation is, you don't come from Africa, so where you want to go back to? You know, which land will you go back to if there was a repatriation anyway? And anyway, you don't even really look like an African. You know, your nose is not an African nose. Like, so tell me what an African looks like. Well, Africans have bulging eyes and a flat nose and big lips and Right, okay. So yeah, these are distractions. I think the returning to Africa conversation is about going to a geographical land mass, if you wish, but it's also about returning to yourself. It's about loving yourself. It's about having aesthetics and notions of beauty that are yours. You know, that, you know, I can look to elder mothers and see their dignity, and I'm just like, this is good. You know, I give thanks because I now have something to aspire to, which is myself. I aspire to be myself instead of aspiring to be something that I'll never be. So I'll always be trying to be there. I never ever get fulfilled because the Most High doesn't make mistakes. If I was supposed to be that, I'd be that, but I'm this. So I need to return to it. I need to understand what it is. The answer is in my grandmother. It's also in my child. It's also in my DNA. It's in me. If I just quiet the static, if I just have the confidence to recognize and to reclaim language. And to say that the system I'm now going to pay attention to isn't the Eurocentric one of domination. So, the answer is in nature, the answer is in people, and the answer is in the mirrors that the people are. You know, I choose my mirror. There are some mirrors, you know, as an aside, there are some mirrors that make you look slimmer, and some mirrors that make you look bigger. And when you're buying clothes, sometimes you want to look at the mirror that makes you look slimmer. That's a thing. I know I have it. It's a thing. So I have to recognize the mirrors that I'm looking in and the ones I feel more comfortable with. And we have to communicate that from our perspective as African people.
Walter was a poet, a Trinidadian poet I met on the campus, St. Augustine campus. A year I went there and was sitting somewhere and this guy came up talking to me and then turned out to be a poet who believes in himself as a poet to the extent that even if nobody ain't taking you on at university, he went to the Venezuelan Institute and he got them to fund the production of a book of his poetry, publishing of a book of his poetry, and translated it into Spanish. And then he's taking his work all over the place. So you can do things if you believe in yourself. Yeah. Opposite or the same. This one isn't fast, but it's different. So you have to listen differently. Yes. Low is not the opposite of high. They are both on the same plane. The opposite of high is flat. The opposite of low is exalted and cared for. Black is not the opposite of white. They speak the same muchness. The opposite of black is number. The opposite of white is number. You want to dance? Hate is not the opposite of love. They endure the same attitude. The opposite of love is refusal of recognition, of similarity, and hate is simply silence. Opposite is not the opposite of same. They both bleed for another relationship. Opposite is a construct. The same is my neighbor. We meet in a circle of forgiving and giving and celestial order.
I want to articulate now, and I've done it in other circles, that I have a problem with forgiveness. I have a problem with the notion of forgiveness. I think it's because English isn't my first language. So I don't know what people are really talking about when they're talking about forgiveness. They say things to me like, if you forgive, it releases the other person and you can heal. They say that. And so I've heard that growing up. I was raised in a circumstance where I heard that. And my circle sometimes say it. And in my training, I would have heard, in terms of doing meditation and empowerment, I would have heard about forgiveness and the importance of doing it. And it's the only area that I always kept finding myself stuck. And the reason why is because I think I need another word. I think forgiveness I can accept that things have happened. I don't like it, but I can accept it happened. But if something keeps happening over and over again, I'm not sure how the forgiveness thing works. So I just say, this thing happens, and I'm not mad at you because this thing keeps happening, but I know I have to protect myself because this thing keeps happening. So I have a relationship with it that doesn't, I'm not harnessed to it. I know it's there and I accept that it's happening, but I don't, so forgiveness is a thing for me. And I think I'm learning that English is an interesting thing. So, and this can be a discussion after. Europe creates constructs and we just all go with it. So there's a human race. I don't know what it means. And then my understanding of the word negroid, I understand it means something that is not necessarily a good thing. And you can look it up and see what it is you found out that it means. Notions of a kingdom with no queendom is interesting as well. And axiologies, so some societies have a serious relationship to things. Your value is based on the things that you have or the status that you hold. And some societies give value to the people and the children and nature and heritage and ancestry and things like that. And not often, if ever, do I find that there's the balance, the proper balance. So I speak to the fact that the frame of reference that I would want to argue is healthy for us is not a Eurocentric frame. That is my conclusion, based on the evidence that I don't have to tell anybody about. We have been harmed, and we have been pathologized, and we have been misdiagnosed, and we have been miseducated, and we need to do something about it, because why would anybody else? Nobody's coming for us. This is really scary. Who tells our young people how to have a relationship with each other? Where is that? Where do they go to learn? Where do we learn that? How does a sister know how to relate to a sister? How does a brother know how to relate to a sister? How does a brother know how to relate to a brother? Where do we go? Where do we systematically introduce that? Yeah, we will share later. There was just one bullet point here. At the conferences, I noticed that the references that were being cited were not appropriate for us. So the talking about the need for reparations because of our hurt and then citing Jewish people is very interesting. Very interesting. And the remnant behavior that may have happened and the hurt, the trauma passed down. There's a doctor, I call her Sister Doctor, Joy DeGroy-Leary, has done some work on Africans and how we behave in the presence of Europeans and how the system of Europe has affected how we see ourselves and notion. The work has been done. We have appropriate reference points, but somehow academics aren't going to those appropriate. Maybe they don't know they're there. Maybe they're with the women, where we don't know where they are. I don't know where they are. So there's a troubling, and this is the last one. There's a troubling similarity. I'm clear. The school system is not education. The school system is designed to perpetuate something. That's what it's, and it does a really good job of it. And we shouldn't be mad at people. If we keep sending our children there, why are we mad? Why are we upset with people? We know, and we keep sending them. It did something to us, and there we are. We send our children there, and we don't go in. We don't go in and ask any questions. We have to go in. We have to go in, and we have to be active, and we have to be visible, and we need to be vocal, and we don't need to be popular. I'm not trying to be popular. I must tell you. I just want to be obedient. I want to be obedient and on purpose. There's a situation. Our men are being pathologized. They are being criminalized. They don't have to do anything wrong. They just have to be men and black. And they're in danger. How that doesn't impact on us is beyond me. It does impact on us. They're ours. We gave birth to them. You know what I mean? And we will again. And our fathers were black men, African men. This is something that affects the family. It affects us. It's an important issue for us. When things are happening to men in this way, it is important for us. Our boys are important to us. When they start to pathologize your son or anyone and say they're disruptive, ask them questions. Interrogate them. Ask them what they mean. What do you mean? What's the example? Is it different from the other child? Ask, interrogate. Be visible, be vocal. Women are dehumanized and silenced. We are being dehumanized by a system, and we're also being silenced by the men that we love. And I just think they need help. They just need some, I'm in quality assurance. I'm not saying it to be derogatory that they need help. I'm saying in quality assurance, you look for indicators to say that something is something or something is not. And maybe, and we're not easy, you know. Let us not pretend that we're just all sweetness and light and easy, because we're not easy at all. And neither do we want to be. Let's just get clear, you know. But what's happening isn't okay. It's not as simple as black and white, you know, as I would have said earlier. It's far more sinister. This is not unlike what happened years ago. Women, there was a young man, apparently he was found hanging from something, a swing or something. They think it's a lynching. Yeah. And there are question marks about whether he was lynched, and he had a relationship with a white woman, a young black man with a white woman, and questions are about whether there were people that didn't like that. That is not unlike what happened years ago. You know, our men would be, Sister Joy DeGorillary talks about it in her work. You know, some men avert their gaze because they know it is dangerous in certain contexts to look. You know, it's dangerous. You go to a place, it does something to you. It happens in our school system. In our school system in Europe, not here, because I didn't go to school here, many of the teachers were white females, and what I observed was a lot of young black men from the Caribbean and then from the continent were being excluded from school for things that were nothing. They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't do a thing wrong. Being nice, I'd like to say they were misunderstood, but the consequence of that has led to them not getting qualified in particular areas, not them being able to get a job, therefore not being able to sustain themselves and have a family and live in a certain area, which then perpetuates something, and then it kicks off, and so it is. Thank you so much. Give thanks.
Let me pronounce it right. Utterings amplified. Did y'all get the amplification? Yes. Did y'all get the utterances? And having got the amplification and the utterances, it's open to everybody to the discussion. So we have heard about the silencing of women. We have heard about this, I still expect you to love me. We have heard about it is different, but it's still the same. And I was so engrossed in listening, I didn't do what I normally do, is take a lot of notes so that I can speak her. So at this point in time, I'm just going to open in. And if you don't mind, we can start with Donna's discussion. I don't know if Donna wants us to deal with it, because Sandra ended somewhat there. You can.
So we should be on an equal footing when it comes to anything to do with making decisions about where we stand in society. And for men to say that they can't find us, see us, and hear us, then we have to look at their mothers, their sisters, cousins, family that are made up of women. Go and talk to them. Why are they not hearing you? Their struggle is the same as our struggle. It doesn't matter whether we're elderly or young. So I'm having difficulty in relating to their supported positions of power, or their supported positions of intelligence or even integrity. Whereas I'm intelligent, I can hold a conversation, I can understand their point of view. I just can't understand why they can't see my point of view, or is very dismissive of my point of view. Yeah? So that's my point. I often have deep discussions with my brothers about why they feel they can give us an equal footing. And once again, it comes down to, as what I see it, it comes down to a cultural attitude. Adam was made first.
Yeah.
You're too emotional.
I'm too emotional.
I'm just.
Okay.
She said she's mirror. She's gonna kid it.
Answer my question.
Yeah.
You hit on it then at the end of your summary of those things. It's in the psyche of the black man. Because from day one, they're taught that Adam is superior to them. They don't look into who gave them that thought, where did it come from. It's ingrained. And because of the male ego, it's easy for them men to take this on board. Right? So that's where, first of all, the problem lies. Is how are we going to educate the black man to get that thought out of his head? I have this discussion with black men, and I say to them, when you pray, first of all, say, you pray that man first. God is a he. Why am I?
Talk louder. You don't mind.
Right.
When you pray, first thing I talk to the men, and they say, well, when they pray, they visualize the Creator or
As a man.
Yeah. So I say, right, why are you looking at it like that? Why can't we be thinking, perhaps it's the other way around? Because we were taught by the system that to think that way, that God, the Creator, is a man. And that's what we have to get to grips with. Once we start to break that down, we'll start to see a change in our to appreciate black women. You say as equal, I say as the same energy.
In Sandra's utterances, one of the things that she kept speaking to is another way of seeing, an alternative view, and how we empower. So in terms of the discussion that is being invoked out of the presentation, how, and this is where part of the purpose of this gathering is to have feedback. Julia?
Yeah, Donna's question, and again, I'm probably going to be very controversial here, and I make no apologies for it. I blame the women because of that. I blame women. Women give birth to their boy children, and then immediately start to treat them differently to their girl children. Yeah? And I've got first-hand experience of that. I have 3 brothers, and I know from a very, very early age I was treated differently, being the only girl to my brothers. And it could be it's simple. I hear what you're saying about, the male figurehead of God and whatever. Let's if you believe in that, okay? But that aside, I don't know what's going on, but even little simple things like the boys can go out to play, but you're a girl, you can't. Yes. You have to learn to cook. Yeah. You don't need to go in any more detail than that. It's there, and it's simple. I remember standing on a soapbox, ironing my brother's school clothes while they're outside playing. I'm 9 years old. Yeah? So I'm sorry, I blame the women. And so women of my mother's generation who grew up with that thought that the boys, they may not even consciously think that the boys are more important, but they act as if they are. And by virtue of the fact that you can't go out to play because you're a girl, or you can't go certain places because you're a girl, where it's okay for the boys, you're subconsciously sending a message that we have to stay in the background. And unfortunately, and for me, until it's too late for that generation, and it's too late for the offspring of that generation, we've got to start now. And be mindful of how we're raising our boys. Whatever the boys can do, the girls can do. Where I work, I've just found a female plumber. And we started giving her jobs. And one customer needed a plumbing situation, a plumber to do that. I sell solar hot water systems. They needed some plumbing doing. I said, I've got a plumber, Valerie, I'll send her around to you, blah, blah, blah. This man he cried out, Jesus, a woman plumber, what she can do, and this and that, and this and that. He tear down his mother's wall, hammered it to shreds to find this leak that she told him what was happening over the phone without even seeing the house. Because she was a female, he wouldn't accept it. In the end, I still had to turn around and send the plumber to sort out the mess that he'd made. By this time, he destroyed his mother's house now. So until that generation has gone, and the effects of how they've raised men of my generation, and I'm talking 50s, right? Then things aren't going to change, but we do have to start from now on and treat our boy children and our girl children exactly the same. That's my point.
As I was listening,
Okay, I know where Julia's coming from. This wasn't my main point, but I just want to respond to you.
Yes.
I don't think it's fair to blame the women of that era because they are in a patriarchal system. Patriarchy was overarching, and they were the ones who set the standards. It's now because we have women's liberation and we are more outspoken that we can do those things. I have a friend who is just like us, very conscious, and she has decided she's going to raise her son so that he can be a good husband for a female. And she gets so much criticism and so many complaints about him. They're asking her if she wants him to be a sissy. Because it takes her. Okay, no. But what I'm saying is, when you speak to these women, though, I was at a conference in where was that? I was in Antigua, it was Grenada, on the same spousal abuse and how women feel and think. They have the same ideas that were spawned in patriarchy. And you know what cements it? The church.
Hence the point I made, very small, but I didn't want to go into that. That's where it comes from.
It comes from there, and but it is real. And so many women who would like to go past it, especially if they're in the church, they can't bring their minds there.
No, I agree with that. They can't.
Yes.
That's why I said once they're...
And so don't blame them though, because I find out when you say that to women, they get so depressed because they feel helpless themselves and can't really do anything about it because that's the way they've been trained. They don't have the energy to move out of that thinking. So I think you have to support them when you find that. And I think the other ones that be trained differently. That's my friend is trying to do. But the church people strategies for raising a child. Same point though, but I just wanted to have a little mercy on those women because they were suffering. Yeah. Okay. My point was I want to congratulate Sandra, Sister Dr. The Honorable.
Excellency.
Her Majesty. What else? To bring this to us. consciousness, trying to open our minds and our hearts and our eyes and our feelings, so that we can be aware of what is happening to us. Nothing new. I'm sure Viola will agree.
No, I would say that.
Oh, there's
I have to
something.
talk with something.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I like it very much because it's refreshing to hear your experiences, you're really woven your experiences into it, and so it's very personal, it's very real. So having warmed us all up, and you know, we're fomenting and things like that, you know, at the bit, you know, we're chomping and everything. What solutions do you find? I'm a solution person. Do you think that more of these sessions will be important and necessary, or do you think that we have to have more grounding? Groundings mean that we can share our stories, we can do more introspection, and you're a meditator, so, you know, should we start a new school in Barbados and have, you know, our children educated, because homeschooling is becoming a big thing. And so, how do you see the way forward? Because action person, what do you do with all this energy that has been unleashed? What do you do?
Thanks.
Thanks.
I said English is my first language, so
Okay,
the
but
answer is
it's
yes.
Yes, yes, always. Okay,
See, I'm not,
Yes, go.
I am not, as I've said, I don't have all the answers. The
No.
thing is the collective.
Okay.
That's why, to my mind, this conversation is important. We need to be having this conversation so we amplify ourselves, our own energy, our own understanding, our own whatever. And also we must engage with our brothers. You know, I think, you know, as I've said it a few times, the how needs to emerge from us.
Organic.
And I think compassion is important as well. Because, you know, I'm not happy to be invited at the as an afterthought. I'm not happy to be invited because I have a vagina, or they may figure that, you know, they'll invite me and not you. That's not the capacity that I want to be there in. This is a war. And so, you know, the answer is among us so that we then emerge it. So I say yes to all of those things.
Yes, and
You
so
know, we have educators, we have scientists, we have, you know, we have homemakers, we have lots of different people. We have people who went before, so they you know, you have wisdom, you know about the workings of Parliament, and you know about the workings of the medical profession and the workings of the retail profession and the work, you know, we can surface this. And we also know men. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe you do. I got a clue about
I understand that. This is okay. I understand that. I was wanting to hear you say that. I hear what I wanted to say. Yes, please. I thought perhaps you would sort of say, yes, we are going to have another session like this, and we're going to invite all the brothers. Oh,
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Let me just speak to that. When we were conceptualizing it, because we were saying that this is the smaller version and we want the feedback, we're going to send it to the people that we accustomed. That's why mostly faces here are familiar to most of the people here. The invitation went to the community, and the community included men, and the community included women. Fortunately, there's another event, and people made choices. People made choices. And I would just leave it at that.
but what I'm told, I did challenge that. And I was told that they're expecting us to come there and join them later.
Okay then. So you see, people made choices in terms of right? So it wasn't.
So it's not a clash.
No, it's not a clash. People made choices.
I thought, woman, you have the power to turn the world around. Straighten it up, or bend it a little if you're too straight. Woman, look at you. You are creator, facilitator, mother, grandmother, provider, speaker. Can't find a woman to speak.
talk. He like speech before a man. I am woman. I am me, not you. You want to anesthetize me and silence me just because it makes you uncomfortable. When I display my power and challenge the norm and the status quo. Oh, so you don't know? If you don't know, you better ask somebody. Ask me. I am woman, big and strong and powerful. People better get used to that. Because tomorrow and next week and the next 10,000 years, I am woman and strong and powerful.
Yes. What I wanted to say is that, yes, I can agree that we might be responsible for a village, but I don't know if we can blame any one people.
I'm just going to be controversial. You stand on the street, you walk up to a white male. I'm not talking about Barbados, that's a completely different type of white male. But in London, for example, and he could actually talk to you, have a sensible conversation with you if he's not racist. He can talk to you about the weather, the news, politics, whatever's going on. And you see a black brother and he can't converse with you. And I'm not saying this to cast any blame. I also have Dr. Joy O'Leary's book, and I met her, listened to her teachings, and I think that's a very significant part of this conversation, on a whole, that there is a healing that needs to go on between brothers and sisters within our community, that within the Pan-African community, that the brothers that have their moment of being in control, where somebody can't come and tell them what to do anymore, where their wives, their sisters don't have to sit there and know that somebody else can come and overthrow them and there's nothing they can do about it. And I think there's whether consciously or subconsciously, there might be some of that going on beneath the surface. It's more than just how we raise our children, it's something that's in our DNA. And I've been to lectures where the floor has been open and not one woman has and the men get up and debate and we sit there just looking pretty.
Margaret wasn't there.
But it was in Barbados. So I guess what I'm saying is there's a journey, we're on a journey, and there's work to be done and there's a battle to be fought, but it has to come. We can't just sit and cast blame on the brothers, we have to take part, their part, try and make a change together.
I wanted to complicate it a little bit. I'm never forgive you for that. I wanted to complicate it a little bit and ask us to think about how we are talking about wanting that we are excluded from something. So obviously there's something good that's over there and that we are not in it. So there's some sweets over there and we're not in it, right? Okay, if there's some sweets over there, it must mean that the people over there are getting to enjoy them sweets over there, right? Which means that privilege is located over there. Okay, so I'm working on a PhD thesis now on leadership. And it is making me see all sorts of things. And I'm thinking, the other side of oppression is privilege. The other side of oppression is privilege. And it is the defense of privilege that creates oppression. It is the defense of privilege that creates oppression. So I don't really want to put the blame to the people who raised anybody, and I don't want to put the blame on the church or the Quran. I don't want to put it on in all of what's going on there is a set of sweets that are being enjoyed, and there are a set of people who are excluded from. The other one, exclusion means that you hang a strange fruit in some southern United States state, and somebody has to sing about it and call black men swinging from trees strange fruit. Or whether it is a black man choking to death and saying, I cannot breathe, and he still dies anyway. And whether it's who gives a shit about the fact that a whole heap of women are associated with these men that hang a strange fruit. Nobody is. People do not endure oppression only because they lose their life, or oppression because their loved ones lose their life. And I want us to consider the defense of privilege. And I also want the defense of privilege is not something that is outside of everybody sitting down in this room. The defense of privilege is, I mean, you don't want to get privilege. So what you have to do is to examine your own self to see that you do not, because if you consider the oppressor, it follows up with your utterance was black, like, right, as such, right? If you think that the oppressor is always out there, let me finish, get rid of the oppressor. The oppressor is going to come forward. Yeah. Because the oppressor, the defense of privilege is a tendency. It is a